Well, a good Saturday morning. Thanks for joining us. It's time for the expert segments here on KION. And Luis Alvarez, CEO of the Alvarez Technology Group, is visiting with us this morning as we get a chance to talk technology. And Luis, welcome back to the program.
Good morning, Mark. How are you?
Doing well. And yourself?
I am doing terrific. It's a lovely Saturday morning here.
Yeah, it certainly is. And one of those go-do-it weekends on the Central Coast. The other day, we had a chance to chat a little bit about the feds telling web firms to turn over their user account passwords. That's your email, your social network sites, all manner of places that you might have information. If this stands up, Luis, from a kind of a constitutional standpoint, it pretty much eviscerates whatever's left of the Fourth Amendment of the Constitution. But at the same time, it also, to me, it's a little bit of a scary kind of thing that, it's basically nameless or faceless to us bureaucrats in Washington, D.C., effectively saying, you don't have any privacy and you don't deserve to have any privacy, and we're essentially going to tell you how you're going to live. And boy, that kind of rubs me raw.
Yeah, and you're not alone. I mean, a lot of this obviously is fallout from the September 11th attacks, where the CIA, the NSA, the FBI, they all felt like they had been woefully unprepared for what happened. And they went to the extreme. And one of the extremes is that they asked Congress to essentially grant them unlimited power to get information that they couldn't otherwise get, things like passwords, and to get data that was stored online and in other places. Because remember, this was 2001, so it wasn't like there was a ton of the stuff out there, but the scope of the permission that was granted by Congress for these warrantless searches, or these private or secret warrant searches, was so broad that even as technology has changed over the last 10 years, they're still encompassed in that legislation. So that's where the FBI and the CIA and those organizations that are trying to get this sort of information draw their power from.
What's interesting here is that some of the government orders demand not only a user's password, Luis, but also the encryption algorithm and the so-called SALT, according to a person familiar with the request. What is the SALT?
The SALT is the key that is used to create an encrypted password. So
it's like a random string of letters or numbers?
Right.
Okay.
So when you create a password, however you create it, it's using this algorithm that requires this SALT, this static key that's used to create the password, so that when you enter that same string of characters, it's able to make sure that it is the same thing, right? So it can recognize your password. Without the SALT, breaking a password, especially a complex password, passwords that use exclamation points or asterisks or upper and lowercase characters, is that much more complex because they don't know what basis to start from. So a lot of these warrants require both, so that the password could be broken much easier and much faster. As it is, even without it, given the power of computing, simple passwords, that is those passwords that are all uppercase or all lowercase and contain just letters, take minutes to crack. Okay. It's phenomenally fast.
And then when it comes to cracking, that's why you're always told, to protect yourself against the hackers. And we're always thinking about, some guy in a basement or an office building in the old behind the Iron Curtain countries, right?
Yeah.
They're hacking away. Actually, it could be your own government at the NSA in Fort Meade, or that new complex they're building in Utah or Colorado, wherever it's going to be. But it could be your own government that's going after you. But I guess that's why you're told to use a combination of lowercase, uppercase, numbers, and then
special characters,
because those are much harder for them to crack.
Yeah, absolutely. And people generally tend to use the same password over and over again for all their online services. So if you have a LinkedIn account and a Facebook account and a Yahoo account, chances are that you're going to be using the exact same password across all of those accounts. So once they get access to one password, it's really easy to gain access to all these other services, even if they don't have the password directly. They can just guess that you're going to use the same one, right, and they're going to be right more often than not.
Now, see, I would say that in the instance of using one password for a number of accounts, it's not necessarily the worst thing depending on what type of an account it is. For example, let's say that you have a free subscription to the Monterey Herald newspaper or the New York Times or the Washington Post, and you don't have any personal information like your address or credit card numbers or anything like that. Okay, or maybe you go on a web board for your favorite college football football team and you have to, sign on with a password, right? In the instance of those types of websites, I don't see any problem with using the same login password for every one of those because there isn't anything for anyone to steal from you there. Now,
Right.
on the other
Yeah.
hand, if it's your bank account, your LinkedIn account where there's personal information, Facebook and so forth, well, at that point, then that's where you ought to get a little creative because there's something that's at stake.
Mm-hmm. And that's a really good point. If you're going to just use one password for those kind of accounts, there's no harm, no foul, right? But the more important thing is that there are right now efforts being made by companies to eliminate the idea of the password altogether, where validation of who you are and the login is going to be controlled more by things like biometrics, by things like verbal cues, or some other method that doesn't require you to write down a static set of numbers and letters and characters that could be broken. That will make password protection really interesting.
So this is something that we're going to be getting a lot more information on, and we'll certainly be talking about as time goes on. One other topic I wanted to mention to you was something that a listener sent to me from a website called Who's Watching, which comes out of Charlottesville. It's about social networking sites. Too much information on social networking sites. You may be giving away more than you think. And it talks about, obviously, Facebook, MySpace, LinkedIn, Flickr, Blogspot, Zanga, making it easy to build a web of friends and acquaintances that you can share with them your photos, whereabouts, contact info, interests. But they also say you got to be thoughtful about what you post. Don't put your safety or your future at risk. Because the important thing is to not forget that words and images you post on the net could be available for years, and your profile may be viewed by future employers and school admissions officials, as well as ID thieves, spammers, and stalkers. They have a little section here on social networking sites explained, and they have a great way of referring to them, Lewis. They call them friend of a friend sites. And it talks about the very nature of such sites encourage users to provide a certain amount of personal information, but when deciding how much info to reveal, people may not exercise the same amount of caution on a website as they would when meeting someone in person.
Absolutely. That's so true. Most people, there was a study done several years ago, but that's still relevant, that showed that most people are more open and more willing to share information with anonymous friends on social sites than they are with people that they know at work or just in person. And there's something about that anonymity which offers a false sense of security, a false sense of nobody can use this information against me. Whereas if you're talking to somebody who's sitting across a table, at lunch from you, you don't want to reveal some of the same information that you happily put on your social media site. So it's a strange paradox that people are willing to share so much online, and yet they would never share the same information face-to-face with a stranger.
Right. Well, recent media coverage highlighted a new fast-growing trend among corporate recruiters and school admissions officials. Check this out. More than just Googling candidates, many now monitor social networking sites, too. Recent studies have shown that 1 in 10 admissions officers checks for candidates on social networking sites 38% of the time.
Yeah.
This leads to rejections. These numbers are likely to continue to climb in coming years.
Yeah, and there are certain protections that have passed several state legislatures, including California, to prevent an employer from doing that. But the reality is those protections only kick in if you're interviewing a candidate, for example, and then you find out afterwards that they have a Facebook or LinkedIn presence and you go check it out. But if you vet ahead of time, like let's say you get a resume and before you pick up that phone call or that phone to call that person, you say, well, let me go check out their online presence, and you discover something you don't like about that person, they'll never know they were a candidate, so they have no standing to complain.
Right.
That's something that people need to think about. If you have a very active online presence, especially on Facebook and Pinterest and some of these other sites where you share a lot of personal information and photos and things like that, you're revealing a side of yourself that normally employers don't see until after you work there. So it gives them insight as to what kind of person you are. And if you're leading a wacky, crazy life, you may not be the person they're looking for.
But on the other hand, Lewis, if you mention on your resume that you volunteer in your community, that you can speak another language, you travel for work or pleasure, then round out those claims by backing it up online. So, for example, if you volunteer with some group in town and and you're out serving meals to the homeless on a Saturday morning, well then, take a picture of that and post it on your Facebook page, because obviously something like that can work for you, not against you. So
Good advice.
we talk about the things that people shouldn't put online, but there are things that you ought to put online. And if you're doing commendable things and you're doing things that are going to kind of help you in the eyes of an admissions officer or somebody who's going to be doing the hiring for a company, be proud to show that stuff and share that online as well.
Absolutely. I mean, show the good stuff. Show what a model employee you could be for an employer in the future.
So just some advice on that, and folks you have a lot of this information on your website at alvareztg.com, right?
Absolutely, yeah. We talk quite a bit about social media and how to protect yourself online, and with the growth of the cloud and all the services that are being provided through the internet, what you need to do to make sure that you're doing the right thing and not exposing yourself to unwarranted attention and unsolicited advice from strangers.
So for more information on all of this, be sure to check out the website at alvareztg.com. And of course, if you need to contact the I-Team, be sure to contact Lewis or any member of the I-Team at Alvarez. And what's the telephone number?
Give us a call at 866-78-I-TEAM. That's 866-784-8326.
Lewis, thanks so much for joining us. Have a great rest of the weekend.
You too, my friend.
Weekend.
You too, my friend.
Weekend.
You too, my friend.